Hello world, my name is Claus Raasted and I'm doing 100 innovation keynotes in 100 days. Today is keynote number 35 and I'm going to be talking about Frederic Laloux's concept of Teal. Now first, let's go back to 2014 when Frederic Laloux published the book Reinventing Organizations. It's a lovely book. It has all sorts of interesting stuff in it, examples, research, great ideas, all that sort of thing. So what I'm going to say is not all of the book, but I'm going to give you an idea of a strong core idea in it. I'm going to talk to you about color-coded organizations, and most especially about Teal. Why is this interesting? Well, first off, it's interesting because what Laloux has done is that he's looked at organizations through time and through kind of evolution of paradigms. And according to him, and the book has sold more than 500,000 copies, so some people have at least listened. According to Laloux, there's a paradigm shift that we're standing in front of. We're going to look at a new way of doing organizations. Now, why is that interesting? Well, follow along. First off, we start with red organizations. Historically, when we went from being individuals to tribes to kind of smaller clusters of humanity, we had small organizations. They were ruled by power, by fear, by chaos. Now, some exist today. One of the examples he gives is like the mafia family, because all power derives from the leader. It's all about command authority, and a key concept in this red organization is the division of labor. Who's doing what? Who's taking care of what things? What is getting actually done? Power derives from the leader, and that means there's a limit to how big this sort of organization can be, but it can be pretty damn powerful and it can be pretty effective, especially if it's small. Now, at some point, Laloux says, we started getting wiser. We started doing things differently. We came up with, and he uses colors, we came to what he calls an amber organization. Now, amber organizations are defined by hierarchies, by formal roles, by control, stability, and by processes. A good example of an amber organization is a classic church or a school or the military. It's something where it's very clearly defined where you are in the pyramid, in the hierarchy. It's very clear that we salute the rank, not the man. So you respect the President of the United States, whether you may like the person or not. You obey your teacher, even though you think they're an idiot, and so on and so forth. But the key thing here is the focus is on stability. It's on process. And orange organizations vastly outperform the red ones. They have potential and reach and power that the red ones can only dream of because they have longevity. They last beyond their founders. They can work even if there aren't powerful, charismatic individuals at their core. That's amber. From there, we widen again. Laloux takes us on the next step, and now things get orange. What does orange mean? Orange means objective-driven. It's the mechanistic thinking. It's Taylorism. It's not exactly Taylorism, but it's Taylorism on an organizational level. It's looking at the organization like a machine, like a lot of fine-tuned cogwheels spinning together, trying to reach the same objective. It's objectives, it's profit. Not necessarily, but for a lot, profit is a good driver, and it's also something where you can measure. This is measurement country we're looking at. It's accountability, which you don't always have in an amber organization, even though you have the power. Here, it's competition. It's kind of saying, how do we win? How do we make it better? And it's innovation. Innovation is a central part of an orange organization because it's always fine-tuning. It's always trying to get better. It's always trying to reach a higher level of efficiency. A good example could be a large corporation. Many large corporations are amber organizations. And if you look back a little bit in history, then you'll find that even more so that's the case. There's these huge, big, mechanically thinking machines that produce profit, goods, services, whatever it is. But they're very much about creating processes, creating cogs in the machine and making those cogs better. Constantly innovating, constantly driving for efficiency. Meritocracy when it's best. That's the goal. Whether it's always the reality, debatable. But at its best, an orange company, an orange organization is a meritocracy. It drives the talent to the top. Let's take another jump. The jump to green. And here we're not necessarily talking ecological, but there's an undertone of that. We're talking about delighting customers. We're talking about engagement, about shared values, and about empowerment. This is a completely different way of running a company. And we're talking about stakeholder balance. And last but not least, culture over strategy. Most of you have heard the term culture eats strategy for breakfast. And here at the green level, the green organization, this is doubly true. This is a good example here is Ben & Jerry's. It's, what do we have else could be there? It's Southwest Airlines is something that is one of the ones that's brought up as an example here. It's a little bit more loose, but it's based on trust. It's based on working together for something that we all believe in. It's based on giving frontline empowerment. It's based on saying, yes, sometimes we're going to sacrifice efficiency because we're going to fool around. We're going to give you license to do things differently, and that will lead to innovation. So there's plenty of innovation. There's plenty of hunt for efficiency here. There's plenty of hunting for profit, but it's done in a very, very different way. It's done through engagement, through empowerment. And the core ideal is delighting, is creating something of value, is not necessarily fulfilling the objective, because that is the objective now. So some companies today are at this level, and they're pretty impressive. They do amazing stuff. They're amazing places to work. They're constantly kind of reinventing themselves and are, in general, doing quite well. And so Laloux's research found. But here's what gets interesting, because now we come to that strange color, I feel, teal. Whoever uses teal as a color, couldn't it just be blue? I'm sure Laloux had a good reason for that. One of them would probably be because who uses teal, so you can use the concept of teal. If I'd called it the concept of blue, or he'd called it the concept of blue, people would be like, yeah, blue's already used for a lot of stuff. So teal, while a weird color, is probably quite smart for using in this model. Now, what does teal mean? What is a teal organization? Well, first off, we're talking about something with a higher purpose. It's not enough to have shared values. It has to be something that wants to do something grand, something greater, something beyond all of us. We're talking about wholeness. Laloux talks about soulful organizations, about bringing your whole self to work, about not just being a machine when you're at work and a person when you're not, but about being a whole human being in your job. We're talking about self-management, not just loose management, not just networks and kind of vague structures, but we're talking about actual self-management, people doing their own thing. There's a great example here of one of the organizations, Buurtzorg, which is a Dutch healthcare or healthcare provider company that has hundreds and hundreds of small units, I think there are 8 to 12 or so, of nurses, and they take care of healthcare in their area or in their kind of sphere, and they have full autonomy. Now, there's, of course, some central support functions, but each of these small clusters are self-managed and have what they call distributed decision-making power. And they can do anything. They can change things up as much as they like. And the really smart part about the Buurtzorg model is that if one of the clusters comes up with something, then they'll share it with the rest of the organization. And some will say, oh, that's great. We're going to implement that. So you have hundreds of small research clusters that are constantly adding to the whole, and you have hundreds of independent small organizations under one big umbrella that can snatch from that whole, that can say, oh, this is good. This is good. We bring this to the table. Super efficient. And they've taken over, I can't remember the numbers, but taken over a significant part of the Dutch healthcare market because of what they're doing. Especially, I think it's in the home healthcare. So let me not get too deep into the weeds here. The important thing is this, it works. There's also something called an anti-fragile organization. And now with Corona being something that's on everyone's minds, this has never been more relevant. How do you make sure that things don't fall apart if there's a weak link in the chain? How do you make sure that you are resilient, like truly resilient? Well, if you have small self-managing units, if they all agree on the higher purpose, if they all have decision-making capability kind of clustered out in the organization, that's pretty anti-fragile, because it means that even if you crush 20 of your smaller units, the rest will go on functioning, because everybody's self-managed and working towards the same goal, but not necessarily in the same way. So pretty damn efficient there. One other example is the company Morningstar. I think they produce tomatoes or something like that. And there's a nice TED Talk by their founder. who also talks about the idea of holacracy, one of the kind of governing forms or organizational forms that is popular with Teal organizations. Interesting talk. You should look it up if you have the time. Most of all, and this is something that I personally find pretty damn interesting, is that Teal organizations, according to Laloux, have what's called an evolutionary purpose. So not so much we decide now and then we will always be on that path, but we listen to the organization. What is it telling us? Where does it want to go? It's I can't remember the precise words Laloux uses, but there's a thing in there about leaders not pointing the way, but listening to the organization, listening to what does it as an organism tell us? What should we do? Because the collective wisdom here is seen as being much greater than the individual wisdom of even the best and most visionary CEO. This is from Reinventing Organizations. If you have the time, then I suggest picking up a copy of this book. 500,000 others have done so. So it's not an unsafe bet. And even if you don't have time, well, then you might have time to watch Laloux's own words about it. There's a 1 hour and 42-minute talk that he gave, which is on YouTube freely available. I sat through all of it. Delightful stuff. And if even that's too much for you, because of course 1 hour and 42 minutes, that's a lot of time, then I hope you got something out of my brief introduction to Laloux's concept of Teal. With that, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for listening.